Hello and welcome back to Newsline, brought to you by People's TV. In today's news commentary, we draw your attention to the individual identified as the mastermind behind the coordinated plan to suppress protesters in Iran. While public statements have been issued by Foreign Affairs Minister Abbas Araghchi and by Ayatollah Ali Khamenei himself, this figure has remained conspicuously silent. Despite the absence of any official remarks, he has functioned as the regime's invisible hand throughout the crackdown. According to available information, he is responsible for summoning 5 armed groups from Iraq into Iran, overseeing their arming, and issuing instructions to carry out targeted assassinations of protesters. This individual has been identified as none other than the incumbent Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. He is a close ally of Ayatollah Khamenei and has long been embedded within Iran's political power structure. Prior to his appointment to his current position in August last year, he served as Speaker of the Iranian Parliament and held several other senior parliamentary offices, giving him deep institutional influence and operational reach. Despite this extensive public record, he has remained silent during the current crisis, choosing instead to operate behind the scenes while security forces carry out the regime's directives on the streets. At the same time, he has come under intense criticism over reports that his daughter is living a highly comfortable and privileged life in the United States of America. Many Iranians see this as the height of hypocrisy, as young men and women are being met with bullets and brute force for protesting over food shortages and economic collapse, while the family of a key architect of the crackdown enjoys safety, luxury, and opportunity abroad. This contrast has further fueled public anger, reinforcing the perception of a ruling elite that sacrifices its own people while shielding its families from the consequences of its actions. In the meantime, pressure from the international community on Iran is rapidly increasing, with several heads of state urging President Donald Trump to take decisive action against the Iranian regime. These appeals come in response to the deadly measures taken against ordinary citizens on the 8th and 9th, which have shocked global observers. Emerging reports now indicate that more than 20,000 civilians were killed during these 2 days alone, marking one of the bloodiest episodes in the ongoing crackdown. This escalation has intensified calls for immediate international intervention, as world leaders warn that continued inaction will only embolden the regime to carry out further atrocities against its own people. The international community has also reported that Iran has shifted to executing protesters in custody secretly rather than publicly, in a bid to avoid international backlash. This move comes after Foreign Affairs Minister Abbas Araghchi, known for his skill in deception, allegedly assured President Donald Trump, through intermediary Steve Witkoff, that the regime would refrain from further violence. Despite these promises, the trend in Iranian prisons now appears to be the covert execution of detainees, signaling a chilling escalation and a deliberate effort by the regime to suppress dissent while maintaining a facade of compliance before the global community. Despite repeated promises made by Abbas Araghchi, Ayatollah Khamenei himself, along with Iran's Minister of Justice and the Chief of Staff of the Iranian Army, has openly vowed that everyone involved in the protests will pay with their lives. This threat reflects a 4-decade-old characteristic of the Iranian regime, which has consistently relied on fear, mass punishment, and violence to silence dissent rather than address the legitimate grievances of its people. In the meantime, lawmakers across Europe have begun voicing serious concerns over the fate of Iranian civilians. Several legislators have reportedly stated that Khamenei's days must be numbered and that the international community can no longer remain passive. Calls for decisive global intervention are growing louder, as the continued inaction of the world risks enabling further atrocities against an already suffering population. In the meantime, the regime has collectively threatened Iran's elite business community and frozen the bank accounts of several prominent businessmen and their companies. This move is widely seen as retaliation, as the protests were initially sparked by the business sector before spreading to the wider public, which then took to the streets. By targeting entrepreneurs and private enterprises, the regime is attempting to choke off the economic backbone that helped ignite resistance. This course of action amounts to both political and economic suicide. In any nation, economic stability is sustained by a functioning private sector, not by coercion and state intimidation. Crippling businesses, seizing assets, and instilling fear among investors inevitably leads to capital flight, job losses, and deeper economic collapse. Destroying the private sector does not restore control, it accelerates national ruin and further alienates the very groups required to keep the country economically alive. The Ayatollah regime, however, shows little concern for the well-being of the country itself. Its primary focus remains the survival of the corrupt clerical system that has ruled Iran for decades. Preserving power, not protecting citizens or stabilizing the nation, continues to guide every major decision taken by the leadership. In the meantime, Iran's incumbent Chief Justice, Hossein Mohseni, has issued an explicit threat against the Iranian diaspora, warning that those who organize and lead protests outside Iran will be pursued. This posture is not new. For decades, the regime has carried out operations beyond its borders, most notably against the State of Israel, targeting Jewish places of worship, businesses, public figures, and intellectuals. This time, the focus has shifted toward Iranians living abroad. Reinforcing this threat, Iranian Chief of Police Alireza Escapes has vowed to finish off every individual linked to the protests, signaling a dangerous expansion of the regime's campaign of intimidation and violence beyond Iran's borders. This is a situation that demands action from the United States and Israel. This view is not merely our own belief, but the shared hope and expectation of many nations around the world. The Iranian regime continues to claim that the protesters it intends to hang have signed confessions. This is business as usual for the authorities, as arrests are routinely followed by coercion, forced confessions signed under duress, and executions carried out without any credible judicial process. In these cases, the alleged crime is often described as blaspheming against God, a vague and politically convenient charge used to justify killing dissenters. Those arrested are denied fair trials, legal representation, and basic human rights, before being executed in the name of religion. This pattern has been repeated for decades and is now accelerating at an alarming rate. The scale and brutality of these actions constitute a situation that warrants immediate and decisive action against the regime. A minister from Belgium has stated that, based on the statistics available to his office, one of the largest mass killings in modern history is currently taking place in Iran. He confirmed that more than 20,000 protesters have already been killed, underscoring the urgent need for international intervention against the Iranian regime. Adding to this pressure, Sebastian Tynkkynen, a Finnish politician, publicly rebuked the international community for remaining passive observers instead of taking meaningful action to stop the atrocities. These developments make it clear that the United States and Israel are not acting alone. There is growing awareness and concern across Europe, signaling that the world's eyes are now on Iran, and global accountability may finally be demanded. Speaking of Israel, the Jewish state initially faced concerns about the rapid consumption of its Arrow 3 interceptor missiles during previous conflicts with Iran. Analysts feared that the stockpile might not keep pace with escalating threats. However, Israeli defense officials, including Boaz Levy, CEO of Israel Aerospace Industries, have clarified that production is ongoing and that the country now has sufficient interceptors to defend itself effectively. Israel has also been expanding its domestic manufacturing of weapons and air defense systems, especially after some countries declined to sell arms last year. With continuous production and recent export contracts, including with Germany, Israel now has the capacity to maintain its defenses without relying on foreign supplies, ensuring it is well prepared for any potential escalation with Iran. Voices from Iran's business, film, and sports communities are increasingly speaking out against the country's oppressive regime. Amid this unrest, Alireza Escapes, a minister-counselor in Iran's diplomatic delegation, is reported to have sought asylum abroad for himself and his family, fearing persecution due to the ongoing political crisis. He had been based in Geneva and is believed to have served as an advisor within Iran's political structure. This reflects a broader trend of Iranian officials and specialists leaving the country, often moving large sums of money out of Iran as they seek safety abroad. International observers see these developments as a signal that the global community is increasingly open to the idea of regime change. Meanwhile, millions of ordinary Iranians continue to risk their lives demanding freedom, and their struggle is calling for urgent attention from the world. If this report helped you see the situation on the ground clearly, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe to People's TV, where truth has no agenda, and facts speak louder than spin.
Subscribe us for more details.